This morning, brothers and sisters, we hear from Mark's Gospel, which is the shortest of all four of the Gospels. And Mark often telescopes down the events of Jesus' life to their bare essentials. Today's excerpt is a good example. It's short, only 4 verses long. So, taking my cue from him, I'd like to make my homily even more narrow than that by not focusing on the whole gospel, but just on one line, which is, Jesus remained in the desert for 40 days, tempted by Satan. So I'd just like to speak about temptation and Satan. Perhaps we don't hear much about the devil these days. Surveys taken of the American public show that about 75% of people believe in angels, but a significantly lower percentage believe in bad angels, or what we call evil spirits. And despite this current lack of belief on the part of many people, the church has consistently taught that demons are real. Even Pope Francis, the current pontiff, often speaks of the devil. He said, "I believe that the devil exists and that his greatest achievement in these times has been to make us believe that he doesn't exist." And the church teaches this because there's many passages in the Bible, including today's gospel, which point out the reality of evil spirits. We know their presence as well from the writings of many of the saints who were not only holy, but very down-to-earth and psychologically stable people, and they often battled with the devil in their own lives. And then people in our own day who know from their experience that demons exist. Every diocese has an exorcist, a priest who's charged with responsibility to pray for people who seem to have an extraordinary influence of demonic activity in their lives. I know a number of exorcists, and they can tell you stories, believe me. So the church teaches that who the Bible calls the devil, the evil one, or Satan, although only a creature, sets himself up in opposition to God as his adversary, and he tempts us to sin. A young female sailor from the aircraft carrier USS Roosevelt once said this about fighting terrorism: "It makes me angry that we have to do this, to defend ourselves against people who won't show their face." And, it's kind of similar in dealing with the devil, because he's a spirit, and so by definition has no body, is not visible. If he were easily recognizable, right, it'd be a piece of cake to resist temptation. Oh, look, there's that guy in the red pants and the pitchfork and the horns. Watch out, it's the devil. Okay, we could do that. But we have to give him credit for being more cunning than that. His temptations generally are not obvious, but subtle. Especially, he likes to tell lies and half-truths. Most often, the devil tries to get us to sin by suggesting the thought that we will miss out on something unless we disobey God. He's subtle because he does not reveal ahead of time deliberately what will be the consequences of that disobedience. How many of us have had the experience where temptation looks a whole lot better on the front end before we give into it than on the back end? That's because the devil doesn't often reveal what are the consequences when we go against God's will. And just to be clear, by saying this, I'm not saying that every time we're tempted or sin, it's because of the devil. I don't believe in the, the devil made me do it approach. Evil may suggest, but it's people with free will who choose. And sometimes it can simply be the case that we need to acknowledge that we need our minds and our hearts more deeply conformed to those of Christ. So I'm not saying that every time we're tempted or sin, it's because of the devil. But I am saying that we need to be aware that we do have an adversary who's trying to undermine our relationship with God. So temptations may not always be due merely to our own desire or weakness, but they can also be suggested by the devil. We probably don't avert to it very often, but we actually pray against the influence of the evil one every time we say the Our Father, particularly the part, "Deliver us from evil and lead us not into temptation." The Greek in which the prayer is originally composed is a little difficult to translate well into English. especially the part, lead us not into temptation, can seem like we're asking God not to tempt us. But God never tempts anyone. Rather, what the prayer is getting after is, Lord, help us to be able to discern what are situations that you want us to enter into and which are ones that you want us to avoid. And then the second aspect of the prayer is, Lord, and for those situations that you want us to enter into that may involve temptation, give us the strength to resist it. One of the most powerful ways in which God strengthened us to be victorious over temptations is by prayer. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of having a daily prayer life. And if we don't have one now, Lent is a great time to start one. It really makes a difference. And I mean that not only in the sense of in a moment of temptation turning to prayer, but I mean that prayer is fundamentally about a relationship. At the root of the devil's temptations are lies that seek to undermine our relationship with God by denying something of the truth about him or about ourselves, like God doesn't love me. God doesn't really know me. The Lord doesn't really care about me. God's plan won't ultimately fulfill me. And oftentimes Satan tempts us for things that God does want to give us, but not in the way that Satan suggests or in his timeline. Somebody's concerned about doing well in class. Rather than trusting God, they cheat. Somebody's concerned about, I'm going to miss out on fun. And so they give in and they get drunk. In all these kind of temptations, they're focused on doubts about what God's intentions are towards us, and they seek to undermine our relationship with him. An effect of an ongoing life of prayer is that we grow in knowledge and trust of God. It's like any human relationship. The more we get to know someone, the more we come to realize how much they care about us, the more we grow in trusting what they have to say. Who are we more likely to listen to about something that concerns us, a stranger or a best friend? And so prayer, it's important in the midst of temptation to turn to prayer, but an ongoing life of prayer is one in which we're coming increasingly to know the Lord ever more and to trust his intentions towards us. And that, brothers and sisters, really is the best way to overcome temptation.